The asphalt was still warm under Calvin's cheek, even though the sun had started to set behind the palm trees lining Crenshaw Boulevard. The flashing red and blue lights of the LAPD cruiser pulsed through his closed eyelids. A knee dug into his back, hard. He could hear someone yelling, but it was muffled by the blood pounding in his ears. "Hands where I can see 'em," one officer barked. "Don't move." "I'm not," Calvin gasped. "I'm not resisting." The cuffs clicked shut around his wrists. It had all happened so fast. One moment, he was walking out of the sneaker boutique with his new off-whites slung in a bag. Next thing he knew, 2 squad cars screeched up and 4 cops jumped out like he'd just robbed a bank. Calvin hadn't said anything smart. He knew better. But the officer with the buzz cut had already decided what kind of kid he was. His hoodie, his locks, his skin. It was enough. They didn't see a college student. They didn't see the son of a hip-hop legend. They just saw black. He lay on the sidewalk, surrounded by shattered pride and confused bystanders. Phones were out. Someone across the street yelled, "He didn't do anything." But the officers weren't listening. "What's your name?" an officer asked coldly. "Calvin Broadus Jr." The name didn't land the way he thought it might. Buzzcut squinted. "Don't get smart." "I'm not," Calvin replied. "That's literally my name." Another officer turned toward his partner. "I think he's joking." But the third one, a woman, checked her phone. Her face changed. "Wait," she whispered. "Guys, you need to see this." Calvin finally sat up, wrists still cuffed behind his back. His breath came in ragged gasps. The world was a blur of lights, honking cars, and growing whispers. But in the middle of it all, he caught the shift. That uncomfortable, awkward silence when the power dynamic suddenly tilts. "Sir, Calvin, do you have any ID?" the woman officer asked, softer now. "I told y'all. I'm not some random. I was just buying shoes. I didn't do anything. I think he's Snoop Dogg's son," she said, showing the screen to the others. The officers stared at the image on the phone, then back at Calvin. Realization hit like a slow wave of nausea. One of them cleared his throat. "We're gonna, get these cuffs off you now." Calvin didn't say anything. He just watched their hands tremble as they unlocked the metal around his wrists. No apology yet, just panic. He rubbed his sore arms and slowly stood up. He looked around at the crowd forming, the cameras filming. A guy nearby shouted, "Y'all messed up, that's Snoop's kid, y'all in trouble now." But Calvin didn't gloat, he didn't threaten. He just looked Buzzcut in the eye and said quietly, "Now you see me?" The officer opened his mouth, but no words came out. Behind them, the boutique door opened again. A store clerk stepped out, confused. "He didn't steal anything," the guy said. "He bought those legit." I saw it. It didn't matter anymore. The moment had already gone viral. And as the crowd grew and the murmurs spread, Calvin turned and started walking, hands still sore, dignity bruised, but head held high. What would you have done in Calvin's shoes? Drop your thoughts in the comments and don't forget to subscribe. There's more to this story than you think. Calvin sat in the back of a black Escalade, his fingers twitching as he stared out the tinted window. The ride from South Central back to the hills had never felt longer. The SUV was quiet except for the low hum of the tires against the road. His friend Trey sat beside him, nervously scrolling through Twitter. "Yo, it's already up," Trey muttered. "Man, this thing's blowing up." "Look, someone tagged TMZ." Calvin didn't respond. His phone buzzed in his lap. Unknown number. He answered anyway. "Yeah? Calvin?" The voice was deep, calm, familiar. He swallowed. "Yeah, it's me. It's your dad." Calvin exhaled slowly. "Hey, you all right?" There was silence before Calvin replied. "Not really." Snoop didn't jump in with advice or questions. He let the silence breathe. Calvin could hear the scratch of a lighter in the background, the distant hum of conversation. Then, "I saw the video. I wasn't doing anything, Pop. Just buying shoes." "I know. Just walking, that's it." "I know, son." Something in his father's voice cracked just a little. "You handled yourself well, proud of you for staying cool." Calvin's jaw tensed. "I didn't want to. I wanted to swing. To scream, but I kept thinking, if I move wrong, that's it. I get it. Calvin's hands tightened around the phone. They only backed off once they knew who I was, not because I deserved better, just because of you. His dad was quiet for a long time. Then, yeah, that's the game. Ain't fair. But listen, you've got a name. And now, a platform. You gonna use it or let it use you? Calvin didn't answer. You don't owe anyone silence, son. But how you speak, that's what'll define you, not your last name. Trey leaned over, whispering, Man, it's everywhere. Insta, TikTok, Reddit. You're trending. Calvin ended the call with his dad and opened Instagram. His DMs were flooded. Reporters, activists, trolls, strangers. Everyone had an opinion, a hot take, a demand. One message stood out. A girl he barely remembered from UCLA had written, I'm so sorry. What they did to you was disgusting. Thank you for staying calm. Thank you for making them see. He stared at the message for a moment, then put his phone down. That night, Calvin sat alone on his balcony, the LA skyline flickering in the distance. The city looked calm, but he knew better. He could still feel the sidewalk under him, the zip of the cuffs, the way they wouldn't look at him, until they did. He lit a joint, stared into the lights, and thought about what came next. This wasn't the first time, but maybe it would be the last time he stayed quiet. Maybe it was time to speak, just not with words people expected, not with rage, but with truth, and maybe a little fire. 2 days later, Calvin sat at his kitchen counter, laptop open, inbox overflowing. He'd hardly slept. News anchors, influencers, civil rights groups, all reaching out. Some wanted to hear his story, others wanted to use it. Trey leaned against the fridge, holding a protein shake. Dogg, CNN just hit you up. Calvin raised an eyebrow. And? They want you on tonight, prime time, Anderson Cooper. Calvin sighed. Feels like everybody suddenly cares because they recognize the last name. Would they care if I was just Calvin from Compton? Trey shrugged. They care now. Might as well make them listen. Calvin stared at the email on the screen. The subject line read, Invitation to speak. Your voice matters. It felt corporate. Like a branding opportunity disguised as concern. Then another email popped up. Subject, Angela Rivers, Real Talk podcast invitation. Trey saw it too. Yo, she's dope, raw, doesn't sugarcoat anything. You should hit that one. Calvin clicked it open. Just a few lines. What happened to you is real. Don't let them reframe it. I'd love to give you the mic. No filter, just your words. Let me know. Something about it felt different. No PR gloss, no strings. Calvin wrote back, One condition. We don't talk about my dad. Just me. Seconds later, she replied, Of course. I want to talk to you. That night, the podcast was live. Angela's voice came through his earbuds, clear and confident. Tonight, we're joined by someone the world knows because of a viral video. But I want to go deeper than clicks and headlines. Calvin, welcome. He nodded into the mic. Appreciate you. Angela didn't waste time. You were profiled, cuffed, humiliated. Then everything shifted when they realized who you were. How did that feel? Calvin paused. Honestly? Like being invisible until I wasn't. What do you mean? He leaned forward. They didn't see me. They saw a threat. A stereotype. But the moment they realized I was connected to someone famous, their entire energy changed. It made me realize they don't see people. They see profiles, boxes. Angela let the silence sit. And it's not just me, Calvin added. It happens every day. My story just went viral, but millions don't. The chat blew up. Comments flooded in. Speak on it. This is why representation matters. I'm a cop and I'm listening. We need this. Angela nodded. You said you didn't want to talk about your father. Why? Because I want to be heard for me, not because I'm someone's son. This isn't a celebrity story. It's a human one. Angela closed the interview with a single line. You just gave people a voice they didn't know they had. After logging off, Calvin sat in the dark for a long time. This wasn't about the fame or the moment. This was about building something that lasted. And for the first time in days, he felt ready to take the mic again, but this time on his terms. The next morning, Calvin's phone buzzed non-stop. Again. Only this time the tone had shifted. "What the hell," he muttered, scrolling through Twitter. His mentions were swamped. Rich kid playing victim. He's only upset because he didn't get VIP treatment. Snoop's kid wants sympathy? Nah. This is why nobody takes them seriously. Trey came into the room, eyes wide. "You seeing this?" Fox News just ran a segment, called you another privileged celebrity using race as a weapon. Calvin rubbed his eyes. Of course they did. The comments weren't all hate, but the hate was loud and coordinated. Old photos of him partying at college were being reposted. One showed him at a private pool, another with a luxury watch. The narrative was clear. He had no right to complain. "I told you this would happen," he muttered. Trey crossed his arms. "Yeah, but so what? You didn't lie. You didn't twist anything. They just don't want to hear it from you." "That's the thing," Calvin said. "They don't care about the truth, just the image. And if it's easier to call me spoiled than to admit they were wrong, they'll do it." He stood up and walked to the balcony. The city stretched out before him again. Beautiful, chaotic, blind. Calvin thought about staying quiet, letting the storm pass. But deep down he knew silence wouldn't protect him. It never had. That night he posted a video. No fancy production, just him, sitting in his room, raw. "I'm not here to change your mind," he said. "I'm here because I lived it." He looked straight into the camera. "I was profiled, thrown on the ground, cuffed, not because of who I am, but because of what I looked like. And that happens to people like me every day." He let the words breathe. "I didn't speak up because I'm famous. I spoke up because I could, because so many can't." He ended the video with one line. "If that makes you uncomfortable, good. Maybe now you're paying attention." He posted it and put his phone away. He didn't check the comments. He didn't need to. He already knew the truth. Real stories make people uncomfortable, and Calvin was finally ready to live in that discomfort, not run from it, not explain it away, just stand in it and let the world see. The morning sun broke over downtown Los Angeles, casting golden light through the studio windows. Calvin adjusted his mic, took a sip of water, and checked his notes. The small team behind the camera gave him the signal. Live in 3, 2, 1. Welcome back to Clearer Than Glass. I'm your host, Calvin Broadus Jr. And today we're talking about how perception changes everything. The intro rolled. It had been a year since the sidewalk, since the cuffs, since the viral video that changed the way people looked at him and how he saw himself. He hadn't taken a TV deal. He didn't cash in on book offers or appearances. Instead, he built this podcast. No sponsors, no scripts, just stories. From the wrongly profiled to the quietly powerful, Calvin had interviewed dozens of voices that never made the headlines, not because they weren't dramatic enough, but because they were real. Today's guest was a former LAPD officer turned whistleblower, the kind of voice Calvin once would have dismissed, until he learned not all allies looked like him. Some wore badges. Some had stories just as painful. As they wrapped the interview, Calvin leaned back. "We can't fix what we won't face," he said. "But telling the truth, even when it costs you something, that's the start." After the episode ended, his producer handed him a note. "You've got someone waiting in the lobby." Calvin walked out and stopped short. It was him, the officer from that day, buzz cut. He wasn't in uniform, just a grey hoodie, hands in pockets, eyes downcast. "Didn't think you'd see me here, huh?" the man said quietly. Calvin didn't answer. The man cleared his throat. "I'm not here to justify anything. I was wrong. We were wrong. I let bias talk louder than facts that day." Calvin studied his face. Older now, tired. "I've been working with a reform group," the officer added. "Trying to train new recruits differently. They use your video, hope that's okay." Calvin nodded slowly. "It's not about me. It's about not doing it again." The man looked relieved, grateful. He left without asking for anything else. That night, Calvin stood on the same street where it had all happened. The boutique had changed owners. The paint was fresh, but the sidewalk, still the same. He crouched, touched the ground where his face had been pressed, then stood up, exhaled, and walked away. He didn't need to be invisible anymore. He didn't need anyone to recognize his name. They saw him now, for who he was, for who he chose to be. If this story moved you, hit that subscribe button and check out the video on your screen. It was picked just for you, and trust me, you're going to love it.